Before we get started, I want to give you guys a warning. If you're a Pixel fan or you bought one of these phones and you can't handle hearing some negatives about it, I would just go away from this video. I am going to mention all the positives, but there are quite a bit of negatives. That really is Google's fault. Hey guys, it's Max with Max Tech, and today I'm doing my review of the Pixel 3 XL. Now before we get into the experience, let's take a quick second to talk about the specs and the price. This phone comes with the Snapdragon 845 processor, which is kind of top of the line from Snapdragon. It comes with 64 gigabytes of storage and 4 gigabytes of RAM. So 4 gigabytes of RAM sounds like a very small amount, but it is the same amount of RAM as the iPhone XS Max, which costs $1,100. But with that said, specs don't really matter, right? The optimization matters much more. Well, that's where you are wrong. That's where I was really disappointed. As far as performance, this thing scores worse than a lot of other phones with the same similar hardware. And on top of that, this phone has really been plagued with a lot of software glitches and bugs and stuff like that. One of them, which I thankfully haven't experienced, has been RAM management, where people would, have music on, go to another app, bam, your music app closes, and that probably is a limitation of the 4 gigs of RAM compared to competition, which comes with, 6 or 8 gigs that can kind of make up for that. On top of that, some people have experienced extra notches popping up as if one wasn't enough, a glitchy experience in the UI, that's something that I've dealt with, some just random glitches and slowdowns and things like that, and even worse, those of you guys who use Android Auto, I've heard multiple reports of the audio just not working when you connect with it, which doesn't make sense because Google makes Android Auto, Google makes the operating system, and now their flagship device that costs $900 is not outputting audio. As far as a new software experience, I honestly am not a fan. I don't like how the launcher works. I don't like you have to go up and then kind of go up again. And the multitasking that they have, which seems kind of like a copy from the latest iPhones, it really is nowhere near as good. On the iPhone, I love being able to just swipe quickly and get to whatever I need. And here we're swiping, it does this little animation, pops back up. And then if you want to go quickly, you can. It's lagging behind. And then going back the other way, you can't. You can only just scroll one way. So they're doing something similar, but it just is worse and it's slower all around. Along with that, if you're taking a selfie photo, that has to be processed after the fact, so you can't instantly see it. And if you take a panorama, not only is it very small in size, about 5 megabytes compared to 30 or 40 with an iPhone, it saves all the detail, you have to wait quite a bit, sometimes up to a minute for it to process and render, when on other phones, it's almost instant. Now, beating out all of those things, and the thing that affected me most is photos not being saved. Now, I was out shooting some comparisons for the Apple Insider channel and shooting some comparisons from my own channel, and then going through the images, I'm seeing images on my iPhone that are not on the Pixel, and I remember I absolutely took those photos. Where are they? And then it comes out in the news, different websites are reporting that the Pixel 3 is not saving photos if you switch apps too quickly before it has time to process and save. That is just crazy to have a flagship device in almost 2019 that can't save your photos. All around, it is a very nice look. It feels kind of nice in the hand, but it doesn't have that same kind of premium feel that you get with, say, an iPhone XS with that stainless steel band. And now let's talk about the front of this device, where we have this huge notch, we have this huge chin, and why is it even there? With this notch right here, if you look at the actual front-facing cameras, they're quite low. There's a bunch of extra space between the frame and the front-facing cameras, and most other companies that have notches don't do that. If they have a notch, they fill in that space, and they don't just have extra space for no reason. Now, on top of that, the dual front-facing speakers, if we actually go ahead and cover this speaker in some of the tests that I ran, the volume barely goes down. Most of the volume is coming from this bottom speaker right here. The same thing goes with this large chin here. One of the benefits of OLED is that you don't need backlighting, meaning it's much easier to do a display with really thin and small bezels and a very small chin, but they have this very large chin here, even though the speaker is all the way down next to the frame here. So if we compare it to the OnePlus 6T, which costs less money. So if you look at the display, it fills up almost the whole phone. The chin is very minimal, the notch is very minimal, and the speaker is right next to the frame there. Now, one big downside that's been really annoying to me personally is the fact that if you turn up the volume close to max, or if you max it out, you get quite a bit of vibration from the phone. If you're holding it like this, you're watching a video, the whole phone is kind of shaking and vibrating, and I haven't really seen that with a lot of other phones that get just as loud. For example, the Note 9 or the iPhone 10, the iPhone XS. As far as battery life, this phone is about average. It's nothing to brag about. Overnight, the battery drain has been quite large. I'm not sure what's going on, and I think there's some other software updates that they said they're going to put out to kind of minimize that. But it does have a decent sized battery, and for most of you guys, it's not going to be an issue. The Pixel 3 did add in wireless charging, but unfortunately, it is quite slow unless you buy the $80 Pixel stand, which enables 10 watts of charging. Now, on top of that, there's been reports of this phone overheating when it's wireless charging. I don't know what's wrong with the thermals, if they didn't design it well, but people have been placing this on a wireless charger, the one that comes with the Pixel, and then it overheats, it shuts down, in the morning it's shut off, the battery hasn't been charged up, and you're kind of out of luck. So maybe that's why they're not enabling 10-watt charging all around and you have to buy the Pixel stand, but even with the Pixel stand, people are reporting overheating issues with the phone. And now let's touch on what I was most excited about when I got my hands on this phone, and that is the camera. Now, I did a video going into detail on why I don't think this is the best camera in a smartphone. You can check out that video above, it has a lot more details, but to give you a short version, I think that Google really put their focus on the low light capabilities of this phone, and it really shows. The low light is fantastic, both for portraits, for selfies. The night sight feature, which unfortunately still isn't released, even though it got leaked everywhere and a lot of people downloaded it. So you can use the night sight feature right now on your Pixel 2, on other phones, but Google didn't officially release it. So that looks awesome. The portrait photos in low light look great. Google did a great job. But what I think they didn't focus on, they didn't really improve at all, is their kind of HDR technology. What really made the Pixel 2 really stand out and it pushed smartphone photography forward is that HDR. So if you compare that to now what Apple started to offer, their smart HDR, you look at what some other brands are doing, all those other brands really took a note of that. They really stepped up their game, and I think a lot of them are better now than the Pixels. At least even like the OnePlus, which is kind of a more budget device, it is very close. It might not be better, but it is very close to what the Pixel can do, and the iPhone is better. You can maintain more details in your shadows, you can get more highlights that are maintained instead of blowing out. The colors are more natural, they're more true to life. Yes, the iPhone lacks some contrast at times. Apple did put out an update that added a little bit of contrast and added some kind of sharpening. They fixed kind of their beauty gate issues, but you can easily add a little bit more contrast yourself versus the Pixel, which a lot of times has too much contrast, and it's much harder to recover details from the shadows where a lot of that detail is just pure black compared to having it in the first place and adding in a little bit of contrast after the fact. Now, one thing that really bugs me with this phone, and some of you guys might like this and that's totally fine, that's the fact that a lot of the pictures are just too cool with white balance, they're too blue. The iPhone sometimes is too warm, but if you compare both of them, the iPhone is more true to life and the white objects look more white, or the color that they were, compared to the Pixel, which makes them too blue. And sometimes at night, even though it does a fantastic job, it over exaggerates the colors, and Google talked about this on stage where it will kind of guess what the color should be and really kind of boosting it up. Now, one area where there's absolutely no argument to be made is if you're recording video, do not buy the Pixel 3 or the Pixel 3 XL. The video quality is horrendous if you compare it to the iPhone. It seems like something from 3, maybe 4 years ago, and then the audio quality is even worse. Maybe one of my first smartphones. Take a listen. This is an audio quality test of the iPhone XS Max. This is an audio quality test of the Pixel 3. I honestly don't know how they managed to have audio that sounds that bad. On top of that, every other smartphone that has a Snapdragon 845 processor has 4K 60 recording, and this phone does not. If you like to shoot super slow motion, where a lot of other phones have 1080p at 240 frames per second, or even with low resolutions 480 frames per second, or even faster than that, this phone cannot do it. If you want to shoot 240 frames per second, you have to shoot at 720p. So those are some big limitations. Even worse, the video quality in general looks really bad. You have not a lot of contrast, lower details. You have these crazy compression artifacts that show up even without kind of zooming in. And then if you decide to zoom in on the video, the results are really bad. Take a look at this where the building is kind of shifting sideways. I don't know what's going on. It's not just the fact that the video is compressed too much. If you look at the file size, the iPhone file is half the size of the Pixel 3's file, but the video quality is so much better. And if you walk around with your phone while you're recording, you want some smooth footage, if you enable the digital stabilization, it crops in 25%, so that further reduces the quality of your video. And all these quality tests that I've showed you side by side, that is without the stabilization, so you get the best quality. So it gets even worse, and even though you crop in so much, which the iPhone does not, the stabilization still isn't as good as with the iPhone XS or the iPhone XS Max. So this is another area where it seems like Google didn't put any of their focus on. They're focusing on the night features and maybe something else, where they just kept the exact same specs from the previous phone and they didn't upgrade it, even though it wasn't good in the past. And this is one area that bugs me, where a lot of high-end tech reviewers say the Pixel has the best camera, but they're not really looking at an overall picture. They're looking at a few things. They may be looking at some low light shots, or some of them just say that out loud and don't even show you any side-by-side shots. And if you look at the video, there's definitely no doubt that it is far from the iPhone and even some other devices like Samsung's and OnePlus. So to wrap all of this up, this is the worst phone that I've ever purchased. Now, it's maybe not the worst phone overall. There's been some really bad phones, but if you look at all the features, all the things that it's kind of missing, you look at the design and this kind of look here, you look at the software issues that it's having for a Google phone that's supposed to be well optimized, you look at the amounts of RAM, you look at how much they're charging for an extra 64 gigabytes of storage, the fact that wireless charging is limited and people are getting overheating, you look at the photo quality, which is good overall, but some other phones are doing better. You look at the video quality, and then you look at the price tag of $900 or maybe $1,000. It really makes this such a hard phone to buy or to recommend to you guys compared to other options on the market, the Samsungs, the LGs, the OnePlus. Like I said, this really put it into perspective, where you have a much nicer looking design, a more premium feel. You have 4K 60 recording, you have 1080 at 240, you have an in-fingerprint reader, you have double the storage and double the RAM for $580, and I know it comes with a case as well, compared to if you want to get the 128 gig of storage, you're looking at $1,000. It really makes this hard to recommend. And if we look at all the issues that are plaguing this phone, it is a big disappointment. So as a final statement, I just want to say that I'm sorry about all the bad things I had to say about this phone. I really feel bad about it. I don't think I've done a video review in a long time where I had so much negative things to say about a product. But with all the downsides and glitches and the issues and the limitations of this phone, and then you consider the price point, it really just does not make sense. The only thing that really impressed me was the nighttime photos. Those were great. But other than that, everything else is really so-so, or kind of below average for a very high price point. Thank you guys for watching. If you guys want to see more videos like my review on this phone, the OnePlus 6T, which I'm really liking, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button, enable those notifications. This has been Max with Max Tech, and I'll see you in the next video.